Hi everyone, and welcome back to our Surviving COVID-19 series. Today we'll be doing Module 4, which is Mindfulness, Self-Care and Self-Compassion. As per usual, you're joined by me, Freya, and Bianca.
Hi.
So before we get into mindfulness and self-care and self-compassion, I thought we'd just check in a little bit about how we all did from last week and some of those intentions that we set. So Bianca, do you want to remind us what you were trying to do over the last week?
Yeah, I've been trying to do some work rituals to kind of, delineate my space a little bit. So I have used a designated work mug. I have it here with me now, work mug. And I don't use that while I'm at home, which is kind of nice. It's kind of, feels like I'm at the work office getting my work mug out. And I've been trying really hard not to use my workspace for anything other than work, which has been going really well. I kind of have just been closing the door when I'm done for the day and just, not going back in, reminding myself, would I drive back to the office for this? Probably not. So I'm not going back in the office.
Yeah, nice. Did that sort of help you shift from that work mindset to personal life?
Yeah, it helps me to kind of just leave work behind for the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
What about you? What was your intention?
So I think I spoke about trying again to make that real shift from workspace to personal space by turning off my laptop and putting it away. I'm not sure I did it perfectly on switching off my laptop, but I definitely closed those tabs and I did physically put away my laptop so it wasn't like a visual reminder of work. Yeah,
great.
I think it was sort of helpful. It seems so basic, but it actually does help a little bit, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, almost that putting away the laptop is the same as me closing the door. It's like, okay, I'm done with that for now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we all did well as well at home with, I guess, working from home and shifting into personal and work life. But I guess let's get started and talk a little bit more about mindfulness, self-care and self-compassion.
Great.
So, looking after ourselves in lockdown. It's not always easy, and it can really be the last thing on our minds in general, and even more so when we're in lockdown. We've all got so much else that's going on right now, whether it's your family, work, trying to maintain, those social connections online. But it can be really easy to forget yourself in sort of that daily grind and that daily hustle. But now more than ever, I think it's really important to try and prioritize looking after ourselves. And a lot of the time we use that metaphor of, if you want to help others, which is great, you can't be helping everyone around you if your own cup is empty. So you can't pour from an empty cup. And I guess the idea is that you need to fill that cup up by looking after yourself and replenishing yourself. So we're going to talk today a little bit about techniques like mindfulness, self-care regimes, and learning how to practice self-compassion, and I guess trying to ensure that we're looking after ourselves and giving back to ourselves. That's what we're going to focus on today.
So I guess the big question is, what is mindfulness? It's a bit of a buzzword, I think. Would you agree, Freya, that's been going around on social media, particularly in the last, year or two? It's been really big. And, often people get a little bit mixed up with what mindfulness is versus what meditation is, and if there's any difference, that sort of stuff. So I guess to demystify that a little bit, meditation is a form of mindfulness, but I guess mindfulness is at the core of that sort of stuff. Now, social media will have you believe that mindfulness is all about, being positive and all of this stuff. But actually what mindfulness is a set of skills for living effectively. That basically it's an attentional process, right? It's about paying attention in a particular way. So you would have seen, for example, the mindfulness coloring books and that sort of stuff. It's just about paying very particular attention to something. So I guess on that, mindfulness is an attentional process, not a thinking process. So I think that's where there's been a bit of confusion, especially with the social media mindfulness movement. So it involves paying attention with openness, curiosity, and kindness to your experience. So we're not trying to get too caught up in the thinking process while we're doing mindfulness. We don't want to be engaging with those thoughts. We just want to be very open and curious about what's happening for us and paying, close attention to what's happening for us at that time, but not getting stuck in the judging, because that's where we kind of all tend to get a little bit stuck with this sort of stuff. So it's about opening up and allowing your experience to be, so accepting some of those things that are coming up, allowing them to be there rather than trying to fight it, which can be really hard. And I'm sure you and I both, Freya, have probably had experience with this, that feeling of, for example, anxiety. That's a big one that's coming up at the moment. That feeling of anxiety comes up and all we want to do is push it straight back down. Mindfulness is actually just about observing that anxiety is there, being curious about it, what is it telling us, and being kind to ourselves about that experience that we're having.
I think it's really important to know that, if you've struggled with meditation in the past, or you feel like, a lot of people say, oh, I just have so many thoughts come up and I can't sort of deal with it. I guess that's okay as well. Like you said, it is about trying to, hone those skills of attention so that when those thoughts do come up, it's okay. And it's like, cool, I can accept this rather than judging it. So don't give up if you found meditation hard in the past. This is a little bit different.
Absolutely. And I think too, learning to be mindful is a process, right? It's not something that you can just do. I think, through uni, Freya, we've done a lot of mindfulness and it takes a long time to get pretty skilled at it. So like Freya said, don't give up, give it a go and be okay with that learning process, because it is a learning process.
Definitely. Yeah, agree.
So why is it useful? So it's a really effective tool in connecting with ourselves and learning to appreciate life even when it's tough. So basically that's what mindfulness is all about, is learning to connect with ourselves and learning to understand our experience a little bit better and pay attention to it, but not to kind of fall into that judging kind of mindset that we tend to do. For example, anxiety comes up, mind goes, anxiety is bad, need to get rid of it, sort of thing. It's more about just saying, okay, here's anxiety. Accepting that experience as it is. It increases our awareness of how we think and react, making us more self-aware human beings and helping to change the way that we might respond. And so, like you were saying, Freya, don't be afraid for those things to come up. That's okay. It actually tells us a lot about how we do think about things and how we do react to things. So even as you're learning mindfulness, those things that come up in you, those thoughts and reactions and that sort of stuff, that tells you a lot about yourself. And it also helps you to build the awareness so that you can change that if it's something that's not so helpful.
So true. I think oftentimes we can go through a whole day without really even consciously being aware of what our experience is of that day. But really, our mind is still ticking over the whole time. So this is such a good way, like we spoke about, to really check in to see how you're doing and what those automatic processes are.
Yeah, and they are automatic. It helps us do things really quickly, but it doesn't give us a chance to slow down and really take note of what we're doing and change things if things aren't so helpful. So mindfulness is kind of the first step in becoming aware of all of that so that we can make changes if we need to. Yeah. It also can help us to connect more fully with those we care about. So you can do, lots of activities mindfully. So one example that comes to mind is mindful play with kids. And so, it's about removing distractions, being really present and in the moment with your kids at that time. And, a lot of my clients find that really helpful, just to put everything else aside and give the full attention to whatever it is they're doing, whether it is playing with the kids, whether it is spending time with your partner, whether it is socializing with friends, just being really mindful in that moment, noticing how you're feeling. Because another thing that happens is that we'll often notice those negative emotions coming up, but we don't actually pay that much attention to the positive emotions when they do come up. And so that happiness, that joy, that love, that sort of stuff, we usually just go on with our day and, it's fine because everything was okay, but we don't actually really appreciate that experience that we had of that joy or that love or that, whatever it is. So it can help us to really connect nicely with the people around us as well.
Definitely being present, isn't it? It's about, really noticing what's happening rather than what's going to be for dinner? What am I going to do? How am I going to get work done? It's really connecting with people around you.
Absolutely. And I think we've all been guilty of that, trying to, for example, have dinner with someone and they're on their phone and then we're on our phone and we're thinking, okay, then I have to drive home and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. And tomorrow I have that deadline, and you don't get a chance to actually fully appreciate the moment that you're in at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And it will assist with living more consciously. So it helps us to increase resilience and quality of life. So this is kind of a byproduct of using mindfulness often. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do we do it? That's the magic question. I feel like I get asked this quite a bit, actually. How do I do mindfulness? So there's lots of different ways you can practice mindfulness. Firstly, and the way that I usually introduce it to people is formal exercises. So there are different formal exercises that you can do. There's lots of guided sort of mindfulness stuff on YouTube and that sort of stuff. And it just helps you to, I guess, practice along with someone guiding you through it. So they'll, talk as you kind of walk through this mindfulness process. And eventually, you might be able to turn it off and do it on your own. But there are these kind of formal exercises that will help you to practice those skills. And once I've got through this slide, we'll do one together. You can also find small ways to be mindful. So, just acknowledging your experience at every opportunity, throughout the day, have little check-ins. Okay, what's coming up for me? How do I feel? That is mindfulness. It's just, increasing your awareness and paying attention in that very specific way to what's going on inside you. Again, notice the way you respond to those internal experiences. So, you might be, okay, I feel a little bit angry today. If then it is immediate judgment, I shouldn't be feeling that, blah, 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 blah. Notice that reaction that you have to your internal experience as well. Notice your reaction to other people, to what's going on around you. Are the things that are a little bit triggering? Are the things that make you really happy in the environment? Notice all those little things and check in with how you respond to that. Mindful activities. So like I was talking about with the mindful play and, spending time being mindful with social experiences. So it's paying particular attention to specific activities you do. So that could be mindful play and that sort of stuff. Or it could be things like eating or showering or taking a walk. And this is something I really encourage throughout lockdown. It helps us, I guess, delineate the time a little bit more by being really mindful and in the moment. I think at the moment, a lot of people are becoming a little bit passive and maybe the hours just ticking by and we're not checking in on ourselves. We're not checking how we're doing. And so, it might be, okay, at breakfast time, I'm not going to have my phone. I'm just going to sit and eat and actually be very mindful of that experience. What does it taste like? What does it feel like in my mouth? What does it feel like for my stomach to be slowly filling? That sort of stuff. Eating is a big thing that a lot of people are not mindful of, and it can lead to overeating. It can lead to undereating, because how often, Freya, I'm going to ask you, how often do you scroll your phone while you're eating something, or I'm
not doing that. It's while I'm watching TV. So
TV, yeah,
I definitely practice some mindful eating activities.
Absolutely. And so many people do it, where we don't just sit and eat. We sit and talk and eat. We sit and scroll our phone and eat. We sit and do some work on the phone, on the computer while we're eating.
Yeah.
We're watching TV while we're eating. We're doing all these things and we're not actually mindful of what we're consuming. I guess I'll ask you too, Freya, have you ever taken a bite of something and then a minute later being like, oh, did I like that? What did that taste like?
Yeah, I have done that.
Yeah. And it's because we're not even paying attention to what we're doing at that time. And it's crazy to actually sit and think about. But so many people, especially with eating, it's a mindless kind of task. So reintroducing mindfulness in those sorts of areas, showering is a really good one because there's a lot of sensory stuff going on, even the steam, the feeling of it, the pressure, that sort of stuff, just to notice, what that feels like for you. Taking a walk, another big sensory experience, feeling what it feels like for your feet on the ground. What do you smell? What do you see? The brightness, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's really good. And they sound like really good ways to, I guess, like get really in touch with the present moment by grounding in those sensory experiences.
Absolutely. And senses are a really good place to start because it is quite concrete. It's quite easy to describe for most people. And so sensory experience can be a really good way to start with mindfulness. I've also found, you know, a lot of my clients and also myself, I've tried to be a bit more mindful when I do go for a walk. And the things you notice that you didn't notice were there before.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so you'll start to notice all these things that maybe you didn't notice before. And that's going on a walk. Think about if you were being mindful with your internal experience. Imagine all the things that you might notice that you didn't notice before. That would help you to, you know, potentially change some of those things so that you are, you know, living in a more helpful way. And then there's a lot of mindfulness apps. So again, a good place to start if you want something that's a bit guided that can kind of walk you through a mindfulness exercise. So things like Smiling Mind, Calm, UCLA Mindful, Headspace, that sort of stuff. There's heaps out there, but those are some of the good ones. Freya, did you have any suggestions for other apps, or are they the kind of ones you would recommend as well?
Yeah, those are the ones I would recommend. I think there's just so much out there, isn't there, these days? Like we're really so spoilt for choice. So I guess just give it a go. Don't feel too overwhelmed. It's okay. Like just choose one thing and see how it goes. And
yeah, and you can always try something different if you don't feel like that's the one for you.
Definitely.
Okay, so now we're going to do a formal exercise on mindfulness. So this is dropping anchor. So this is all about getting in touch with, you know, what's going on inside of you, but also what's going on around you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through it. So it's going to be a guided one. So if you want to close your eyes, open your eyes, whatever feels the most comfortable for you, and follow along. Okay. So there's a lot of emotion showing up for you right now, and we're going to help you to handle it. So if you would just follow along with my instructions. First, just see if you can push your feet hard into the floor. Push them down. Feel the ground beneath you. Now sit forward in your chair and straighten your back. Feel the chair beneath you. Notice your back supporting you. Now slowly press your fingertips together. As you do that, gently move your elbows and your shoulders. Feel your arms moving all the way from your fingers to your shoulder blades. Take a moment to acknowledge that there's a lot of emotions here that are coming up for you. You didn't ask for them, but here they are, and it can be challenging and difficult, and you might want it to go away. And yet it's not going. Silently acknowledge to yourself what sort of emotions you have coming up. You might say, here's sadness, or here's anxiety, or here's a painful memory. Now notice that as well as pain, there's also a body around that pain, a body that you can move and control. Straighten your back again and notice your whole body now, your hands, your feet, your arms, your legs. Gently move them and feel them moving. Have a good stretch. Notice your muscles stretching. Press your feet down and feel the floor. Now also open your eyes and look around the room. Look up, look down, look side to side, and notice 5 things that you can see. Also notice 3 things that you can hear. Sounds coming from me, sounds coming from the room around you. Now I want you to notice you and I working here together. Okay, and so that's a little bit of grounding at the end. And then usually we would debrief with a few questions. So things like asking if you notice any difference in yourself, if you feel a bit less caught up in those emotions, because it is about acknowledging the emotions, but then also acknowledging that, you are here in your body, in your environment, really bringing you back to that present moment. How did it feel for you, Freya?
Yeah, I guess even as we were talking about mindfulness today and how it's so good to check in on yourself, so many different emotions that I'm experiencing today that I didn't even realize. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool, I think, and I really like doing mindfulness exercises.
Yeah, absolutely. I always find it really helpful to kind of, number one, notice what it is I'm feeling, but then also bring me right back to the present. Because as much as it's, we talk about mindfulness and all that sort of stuff, it is very easy to get swept into, okay, what am I going to do today? What are my plans? What do I have to do next? Sort of thing. And so it is nice to just pull it back in and acknowledge that stuff and bring me back to the right here, right now.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, give those things a go. There's, as I said, there's lots of stuff on YouTube. There's those apps you can download. So give those a go. And I think we're going to move on to self-care now.
Great. All right. So self-care, another buzzword, but actually another thing that's really important.
Yeah.
So, I guess self-care, what it isn't. It's not being selfish. So let's take that off the table. It doesn't mean that you're being, self-centered or too focused on yourself. It actually means that you're looking after yourself. You're trying to keep yourself healthy physically and mentally. And while that's just important for everyone in and of themselves, everybody deserves it. Just, being alive, you deserve to have that self-care and wellness. But also, if you want to do those other things for the people around you and, in your job, like we said, you can't be pouring from an empty cup. So it's actually really important to have that self-care to help the people around you. So self-care doesn't just have to be a face mask, although that is lovely as well. It can be anything that feels really nourishing to you and that makes you feel, like gives you that sense of wellness. Sorry, we're working from home, so you might hear some background noises every now and then. So apologies for that. But I'm sure we can all understand, we're all working from home at the moment. But anyway, back to self-care. It's anything that can feel like, you feel like a sense of yourself returning, that maybe a little bit, that's good. I feel a little bit more myself after doing it. So it doesn't have to be something super extravagant. It doesn't have to be going online shopping and spending lots of money. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be like an hour meditation. It can be lots of different things, and it's really personal, I suppose. But I guess it's something that we'll have to think about. Like, we'll have some tips about where to get started. But just to reiterate, I guess it's hard. It can be hard to find that time to put in place self-care. So I know it's been difficult for a lot of us going through the lockdown and the pandemic in general. Probably found it difficult to actually make that time for ourselves in that daily grind and hustle. So it can really feel difficult to schedule in that time because we might feel like a sense of guilt coming up. To actually even give yourself 5 minutes. It feels like a bit like, who do I think I am to do that? But actually it's really important, and we should try and schedule in that time to look after ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like that guilt, is one of the really strong emotions that comes up around it. But again, like you've been saying, it's really important to look after ourselves so that we can give to other people, because we can't do that unless we're giving to ourselves as well.
Definitely. And I guess we want to try and be the best people for the people around us, best version of ourselves for those around us too. And by investing in yourself, that's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
So let's think about how we can practice self-care. First of all, it's important to make time for it. So the day can get away from us. So think about what is the best time of day that would work for you to schedule in that time. So as little or as long as you want it to be. It could be a mindfulness activity. So, it could be a mindfulness eating activity in dinner time. You could schedule that in to be like, I'm going to make that time as dinner. Or, it could be a walk for an hour. So it could be, I guess, as little or as long as you want, but it's really about making sure that you're putting into your diary or your mental diary that you're going to be spending that time on yourself, and that's really for you. So think about when it's going to be practical. Maybe it's not going to be in the morning when you're getting the kids ready for online learning. So try and figure out what time is going to actually be feasible to do it, and then let's really commit to it. Because the first thing that can be cut out of the list is that self-care, right? That feels like the most dispensable thing, but really we want it to not be, because it's actually really important to do that. So next thing is to think about, what are you already doing? What can we enhance? So I guess, like we spoke about mindfulness eating, that could be like an activity that you're already doing, but we could really try and hone in on that and really boost it up in terms of that feeling of wellness and I guess like sense of self. So exercise is a great one. What are you doing for exercise? Does that already make you feel good? If you already do it, that half an hour, do you feel good after doing that? Awesome. Then we know that that's something maybe we could boost up a little bit, add to different times of your week, or even your sleep routine. That's such a big one. And it doesn't seem like it. Maybe it doesn't seem like that idea of self-care that maybe social media likes to portray, but it's actually really important for us to feel well and our sense of self. So sleep is super important. And I know a lot of people don't get it. And there's lots of different reasons for that. Maybe you're a new parent, that's totally fair. But if you can, it's really good to prioritize that sleep. A lot of us don't get enough of it. I think 8 hours is the sort of average that we should be aiming for, but there's a little bit of individual variability in there, but you can try and find that time for it. It's definitely recommended. Next thing to think about is your values. So what do you really care about? What makes you feel nourished and fulfilled? It could be something about family. Is family the thing that really gives you that sense of wellness and fulfillment and connectedness? So it could be something like, spending time with your sister or a loved one to give you that sense of self-care. We all have different values, and I think it's really worth exploring your own if you haven't done that already. It's a really good place to start and can tell you a little bit about yourself, because they can guide that sort of self-care journey that you want to be on. So I guess if we're thinking about a different value, maybe what's one of your values, Bianca?
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like one of my values is kind of curiosity and, that kind of always learning sort of value. And so I try to incorporate that sort of stuff into my own self-care. I like to take a little bit of time for myself, away from other people, because I find, connecting all the time for me can be a little bit exhausting. So I like to take a bit of time for myself, and I might read a book or something like that, do a little bit of research, or, watch a like educational documentary or something like that. I find that really fulfilling for me. And so that's kind of what I would do.
That's awesome. That's a really good one. I feel like so many people would have that as well, that sense of like, curiosity about things, learning, lifelong learning, that value. That's such a great one. I don't know. I guess I was just reflecting on mine, and maybe this is something I'll have to think about a little bit more as well, what values I have and how they guide my self-care. But I guess maybe family would definitely be one of them. So I guess spending time, and maybe doing that in like a more mindful way. Will be the important step in that process, to be like, this is the time that I've set aside to spend with the people around me.
Absolutely.
So maybe have a think about what your values are and how they can sort of guide what you want to put into your self-care routine. And I guess a big part of that as well is the little things. Doesn't have to be that huge chunk of time, doesn't have to be like that documentary. It can just be like a cup of tea at a certain time each day, or a bath, lighting a candle, stepping out to get some fresh air, all those things. And I guess that's about that mindfulness aspect to it. Really appreciating that ritual that you're engaging in, that, this is really like giving me a sense of coziness or a sense of like being present in the moment. I think those small things can be really powerful.
And I think those small things are really good in times where maybe you're not feeling yourself. I think it's important to schedule self-care time in, but I think, also sometimes you might not be feeling so great and maybe you need to do a little something to feel a bit better. I know for me, I definitely, when I've had a bad day or I'm not feeling myself, I'm immediately like, I'm going to have a shower, because I just do that really mindfully, and it just brings me back to, the present moment, and helps me to kind of recenter and just process my day a little bit.
Right.
And, it is those little things sometimes, especially in retrospect, I think, if you've found that you've had a hard day and you need to do a little something like have a cup of tea or light a candle, or, go outside for a second, it's those little things that are going to help to just process what's happened and bring you back to what's happening now.
That's so true. Yeah, that's really lovely.
Okay, and lastly, self-compassion, what and how? So I find self-compassion is one of those really tricky skills that people find a little bit difficult. But once you've kind of mastered self-compassion, I think it can be a really life-changing skill to have. So self-compassion is about being gentle, kind, and understanding with yourself. So basically learning to accept that you're not perfect, no one's perfect, and understand that you can learn and grow from every mistake you make. So even if something doesn't go quite right, that's okay. That's fine. These things happen to everyone. And actually, this is a learning experience for you. You get to learn and grow from this, mistake that's happened. And so I guess the really hard part for a lot of people is how do I start being compassionate with myself? Because it's an easy thing to, I guess, understand, but to actually do can be a bit harder.
Yep.
So being mindful would be number one. So again, increasing your awareness will allow you to think or feel what you are having come up in the moment, right? It's learning to accept that with curiosity, not judging, that sort of stuff. And that will help you allow it to come, accept that it's there, and allow it to pass. Because, we've probably had many conversations about this, Freya, everything will pass at some point, no emotion lasts forever. It will come and it will go, and that's going to be okay. And that's a normal emotional experience.
Definitely.
Practice forgiveness. So stop punishing yourself for your mistakes. And, we see this so often, people holding on to that mistake that they've made and punishing themselves for it. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Freya's not perfect. No one in this world is perfect. And so it's about being gentle with yourself when you are confronted with shortcomings. And we all have them. We all have things that maybe are less than desirable about ourselves, or things that we've done that maybe we regret a little bit now. Yeah. But punishing yourself isn't helpful. It's not achieving anything. It's not helping you to move forward. Holding yourself in that space can be really damaging. So it's about letting those mistakes go and knowing that you're valued by those people around you because of who you are, not because you're faultless. Right. So I've made plenty of mistakes, and I still have lots of people in my life who care about me and who value me, not because I've done everything right ever, because of who you are as a person. And I think, it's about accepting the cumulative total of who you are rather than those tiny little speckles along the way where things maybe haven't gone quite right.
Yeah, we're not defined by those moments in our lives, are we?
No.
We're so much more complex in those moments and times when we've made mistakes, and we are all going to make mistakes along the way. That's part of being human. And
if there was no mistakes, we might never learn, we might never grow, we might never change as people. And so actually some of those mistakes can be really powerful in changing a direction or helping us to learn something that we wouldn't have known before.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then lastly, it's my favorite one. Ask yourself, what advice would I give a friend? Because I bet if someone came to you with that same mistake that you're punishing yourself for, you would say, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. You can let it go. That's all right. We have a much easier time being compassionate with people around us than we do about ourselves. And so sometimes it's easier to think about things in that way. If you're feeling really down on yourself and feel like you're punishing yourself for something you've done, just think about, okay, if my best friend came to me with this issue, what would I say? If my mum came to me with this issue, if my sister came to me with this issue, if my partner came to me with this issue, what would I say? And it's very likely that you would say something much more compassionate to them than you would to yourself.
100%. We're the harshest critics of ourselves, which is so unfortunate. But I guess it's about getting a little bit of perspective first. Like, even if you're finding it hard to apply it yourself, getting that perspective, like, what would I say to somebody else? Okay, I can see that there's like a little bit of a difference there between what I would say to myself and somebody else. But, just in and of itself, we deserve to have that compassion we can give to others. So trying to bring it back to ourselves too.
Absolutely. And, we do so readily give it to other people. And, thinking about how you've been treating yourself and how you would treat a friend, noticing that discrepancy can be a little bit confronting.
Yeah.
But also, very powerful, because you might be like, okay, well, actually, this might be important for me to apply to myself.
Definitely. And even thinking about like what I would apply to a friend, that's somebody you have compassion for. What compassion would I bring to like a stranger on the street? Would I give a stranger on the street compassion? Okay, well, maybe I should try and bring that to myself too, because we can give it to everybody so freely. Maybe we should try and internalize that a little bit.
100%. I completely agree with that. Okay, so I guess that's it for us with mindfulness, self-care, and self-compassion. I guess I wanted to check in with you, Freya. What do you feel like you're gonna give a go over the next little while?
Gosh, I love this topic. Like, I feel like I can take so much away from this. I love self-compassion. I feel like it's something we can all take so much away from. But maybe I think for me, I need to start with being a little bit more mindful, I think. And I think that's going to be helpful for my self-care and self-compassion to really just check in on how I'm feeling and accepting that a little bit. Because just today doing that practice with you, Bianca, felt really powerful. Yeah.
I'm glad.
What about you? What are you going to...
Yeah, I feel the same way as you. I love this topic. I think it's really important. And, I think it's kind of hard because I think mindfulness and self-care have got a little bit of a bad name because of all of the...
It's a tick box, isn't it? Like, just do this.
Yeah, absolutely. But, when you really do get into it, it's really powerful stuff. I personally am going to try to be a bit more mindful in the stuff that I do mindlessly. So things like eating, I often will just be scrolling my phone or doing a little bit of stuff on the laptop or something like that while I'm eating. So I'm going to try really hard to be a bit more mindful of that, but mindful of my experience in general. I think even doing this webinar is a bit of a check-in for me around, okay, how mindful am I actually being? So mindfulness in general, I think it is the foundations for all this other stuff, right? So it's really important. But that self-compassion stuff I think is really, really important. And just checking in, if I'm being a bit hard on myself, just thinking about, okay, what would I say to a friend?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I guess that's it for our webinar series. Thank you everyone for watching, tuning in, making intentions. It's been great, I think, to be able to lend some of our insights, around what might be really helpful during this lockdown. I know it's been a long time, and hopefully we're going to be coming out of it soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. It's been so great. I feel like, doing this webinar series, I've taken so much away from it myself. So I hope you've taken, even some small little bit from this webinar that we've done together. And a lot of this stuff as well can be applied once we're out of this lockdown. So see what you can maybe take away from it as well moving forward, what you found helpful and what you want to continue in that sort of post-lockdown journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Freya. Really appreciate co-hosting with you.
Yeah, it's been really good actually, and I've learned a lot from it. So I really appreciate it, Bianca.
All right, guys. Well, take care, and hopefully you've learned a few things along the way. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, bye.